Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It, the podcast to help you fix your marriage. I'm Shai Lewis. I'm here with Nina Roesner. Our mission is to help you, Christian married man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. All right, so today our topic is 3 ways to alleviate the competition in your marriage and get on the same team. All right, so right now the Olympics are going on and everybody's into it. And one of the coolest things I saw is this couple that has just been cheering each other on. The husband is, he's lost 2 of his limbs, so he's competing in the Paralympics, and then his wife is competing in the long jump. And the enthusiasm he has for her right now, because the Paralympics haven't started yet, is just amazing. And I'm sure she's going to do the same when it's his turn. But it's just really cool to see, 2 people who are massively competitive and can just support each other in their gifts. Unfortunately, in marriage, that can become something that creates opposition if, it's not handled the right way. And so we want to talk about that today and how that can show up and what to do about it. So welcome, Nina. I'm excited to talk to you about this today.
It's a thing. And the timing's good because Olympic season. Yep. Glad you picked it.
Yeah. I think it's very timely. So before we get into that, I want to just direct our listeners to our website, greaterimpactwives.org. We have a free PDF for you called 5 Tools for How to Stop Walking on Eggshells. We also have a marriage assessment for you to take in your free time where you can kind of just assess where you guys are and, maybe learn something and consider doing more with us. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is the Strength and Dignity Conference we have coming up in September. It's going to be a fun time. There's still a few seats left from what I've heard. So if you're interested in joining us in person, it's a big giant sleepover. We have lots of fun. We have really cool topics. We do some healing, and it's just a nice way to get away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life and connect with your sisters in Christ. So check that out. And if you're interested, sign up and join us. All right, so here we go. Competition in marriage. So a lot of things that we see when you're competitive and your husband is competitive is this thing where I think, Nina, you mentioned it in one of our last episodes where we were talking about there's a need to conquer that we often see in men and maybe even some women. But I find that interesting because if you don't really know that about men, or if you don't really know that about your spouse, you can take that the wrong way. And we can see that showing up in workplace, career, salary, gifts, talents, fitness goals, you name it. This can be a thing, right, in marriage. And so I'm wondering maybe what your thoughts are around that. And once you realize that's happening, what are some things maybe we can do?
Mm. Yeah, I think at the core of this is our need to be seen, known, heard, validated, our own sense of unworthiness, and lack of focus on the other person. When we start navel gazing and feeling less than, then that's when the demons come out and we get jealous or we get competitive or whatever. And I'm not by nature a super competitive person. But I did notice last year when we had my horse trainer has a competition every year. and I'd never entered it. And he talked me into entering it. And I ended up winning one of the things I entered. And I will tell you, there was some kind of ferocious monster that arose that it was just this huge adrenaline rush and it was incredible. And then I thought, it's probably a good thing I don't do this very often. And I was competing against, I mean, it was really good natured. Everybody's supportive of each other and there's no underhanded backstabbing or any of that kind of stuff. But when you're thinking about, well, how does being competitive apply in marriage? It's like, well, how supportive are you really?
Mhm.
When your spouse gets a promotion or somebody says something nice to them at work, is your go-to to be, oh, well, nobody does that about me, or when's the last time you said something about me? It's like, wait a minute, you're not the topic. So
Mhm.
our insecurities, it's a good test. When something good happens to our spouse, how do we respond to that? Are we supportive and like, of course they think you're awesome. Like it's about time. Man, oh man,
Right.
those people are slow. Like, are we on their side 100%? Or
Yeah.
do we make it about ourselves? And
Yeah.
if we are, then that's indicative of a low sense of identity and maybe we see our spouse doing that, so we
Mhm.
don't, and if that's the case, like you're not real smart to share your wins with them. If they're just going to undermine them verbally to you, you're just going to get hurt by that, because the heart of marriage is let's support each other like wild people, like let's be all in no matter what. And if you can't get that, then you're not wise to put yourself out there vulnerably hoping, because you'll just get trashed in that. So you want to try that every couple of months if your spouse is working on growing, but if they're not, like tell the people that will cheer you on.
Yeah.
So you gotta be wise about how you handle this stuff.
Yeah. And that has to be tough, right? The one person you want to share your wins with, you
Hmm.
can't. And, it's because of, a lack of maturity or identity, as you said. And so there has to be space given for that growth. Um,
Hmm.
and it takes a while sometimes to get there because it's like the other side of that is you're trying to get turnip juice out of a grape, or maybe the other way around, grape juice out of a turnip. And you have to just adjust your expectations, I guess,
Hmm.
is
Fair.
what you're saying. Um, okay, so is there, let me ask you this. Is there such thing as healthy competition? Like, um, I don't know, maybe like a card game or, one of those
Hmm.
board games that, a lot of families get into, and it's just a fun game night,
Yeah.
family type of thing. Now, some of us get a little too serious with that, but I would think that that would actually foster an environment of just healthy bantering.
Yes. Yes. You ought to see the Roesners play croquet. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
there's so
right.
much shade. It's goofy. And no, and it's croquet. Like, who cares? You know, so you could be okay with the outcome, but you have fun with it, right? And you're in trouble if you care too much about winning. Um, yeah, I see this with young parents a lot. They'll actually try to beat their children in Uno, and it's like, okay, even rats understand that you have to let the kids win sometimes or they're not going to want to play with you. Like that's what happens. They don't let them win every time, but they got to win some or they don't want to play anymore. That's what makes it fun too. And it builds esteem. So to your point about, is it fun? Yeah, it should be. And if it's not, well, what's that about?
What's that about? All right. What about when this is a thing for your spouse and it's so big that you feel the need to shrink? And I know that's like not a good thing, but like I want to give an example.
Mhm.
So a lot of women will choose not to work. And it may not be for that reason, it may be for other reasons. But some women will choose not to work, or they'll take a lesser job or a lower job or something like that, where the title isn't a big deal because they know that their husband needs to make more money, be the provider. Like that's a thing for him that he has his identity wrapped around. And so they don't even want to touch that place in the marriage because of that. And I want to get your thoughts around that because again, this is not all women. You
Mhm.
know, some of us will say, well, I want to be home with the kids. We want to, you know, have a healthier dynamic when it comes to time and all of those
Mhm.
reasons. But for those that are doing it to shrink themselves,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So I think you make a valid point and question around this. Reality is that, yeah, you see fewer women in C-suite positions. And yeah, I honestly don't believe, because I've been in corporate America for, well, I'm not now, but I work with a lot, I do a lot of executive coaching too. So you see a lot of men in those positions. Why? Because they are willing to sacrifice. They don't need to be the one to take the kid to the doctor or meet with the teacher. They don't need to be, they're not that, I mean, I don't want to say fathers aren't interested, but it's not their wheelhouse. It's not their focus, their priority. So if you're in a marriage, it's normal if you have the desire to be that one, and it is fine to take a lesser stressing position. I can't remember the woman's name. She was CEO of Coca, or no, PepsiCo.
Mhm,
Um, and she said, you can't do both well. You can't be a CEO of a corporation and raise children. Like you need people around you to help you with that, and it's still not going to be enough. Like something's going to get shortchanged. You
mhm,
get fired if you shortchange your job. So yeah, I don't, as women, this is going to sound really sexist, but if you have children, just it's okay to want to be with them. Like they need you. You should be the primary focus or the primary influence in
mhm,
their lives. You are so important to their lives. Now to deal with well, I have to not make more money than him and I can't, let's say you don't have kids or they're in high school or they're older or whatever, and you've decided, well, I'm not going to go for this position or I'm not going to be realtor of the year or whatever it is because it'll make my husband feel bad. It's like, wow,
mhm, mhm,
no, stop that. Like, since when are you responsible for his mental health? It's like, well, he'll just get his feelings hurt. It's like, yeah, maybe he needs to grow up. Maybe he
mhm,
needs to be able to handle that. And a good question is, have you been arrogant about how you've won things in the past? Do you rub his nose in it? Do you demand, how come you're not as neat as I am? Like, I mean, how are you handling success? You know, and then how are you handling his successes? Are you cheering him on? Are you demand, I can't believe I hear this, but I do. Oh, he doesn't make enough money. We've got the smallest house in the neighborhood. We're buying used cars instead of new ones. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This man's going to work on a regular basis and you're concerned about what kind of car you have.
mhm,
Like stop it. So lots of little nuances there. And the whole idea that I need to not do my best or not live up to my calling because it might make somebody feel bad. Well, I think that just flies in the face oppositionally to the gospel message itself. Jesus created us, God created us with certain giftings, and we need to go shine in that. We need to be absolutely the best that the Lord has given us. We don't have to be better than everybody on the planet, but we need to do our best. And that means having a life that's balanced. And it means in the situations we're in, doing our best. And that may mean you get a title or a promotion or whatever. That may mean you make more money. He may struggle with that, absolutely. And that might be good for him. I think it is a struggle for a lot of men, and it is a struggle for a lot of women. And I see this consistently, and I don't like it. Men tend to have an attitude about money that is, I mean, in general, I've seen this, okay? And I think it's a healthy attitude that what I earn as a man is for my family. And Shanti Feldhahn's research shows that men go to work and what they provide is for their family. That's how they look at that, generally speaking, on average. Okay, that's not every man on the planet, that's just in general.
mhm, mhm.
Women tend to go, this is mine. I made it. Yeah. And there's some stuff that needs sorting in there. Especially if you're, the breadwinner for the family, which you see these days, right? So if
Mhm.
that's you and that's your attitude, that needs an adjustment.
Hmm.
Ouch.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are you telling me that what's his is mine and what's mine is mine doesn't fly? Is that?
Hopefully that's not news. I know you too well. That's not true, but you know what I'm saying, though.
Yes. Yes.
I think part of this comes from, when your kids are young, at least the women in my age demographic and a little bit younger and older, we'll work part-time while we're raising our kids. And maybe a lot of a very common thing in Christian circles is, okay, your income is slush fund. And that's how we did it, was
Hmm.
my income was slush fund. And we lived off of just his so that we had freedom to do whatever financially we wanted to do based on his income so that I could or couldn't work, did or didn't work, like whether I was working full time or not. And that didn't mean that the money I made wasn't valuable. Absolutely it was. But it wasn't, it was our money. But I
Mhm.
never really looked at that as this is mine. And I can see how that would be a thing. I have a number of clients that really struggle with this concept, especially if you go through a separation or if one of you is great at money and the other's terrible at it, which by the way is the typical marriage. Somebody's a spender and somebody's a saver, and then like, yeah, that's a thing. Um, and then I think the big remembrance here is that the amount of salary or the position, those are just words, those are just numbers. They don't represent your value and they don't represent your spouse's value. So if you really have a one flesh mentality around this, you're not going to be, I got a bigger bonus than you did this year. Like, stop that. That's just evil.
Right.
Yeah, it's we. Here's how well we did this year, even if you're making 70, 80% of the income. So, yeah.
Amen. Amen. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit because we did tell our listeners we had 3 ways for them to conquer this whole competitive thing. One of the things you mentioned in that episode I referred to earlier was helping your spouse or maybe you getting a hobby yourself, just to sort of get that spirit, that unhealthy competitive spirit out of the picture. Can you speak to that and how that is helpful when the competition isn't so healthy?
Yeah. So we're individuals first.
Yeah.
So, if we're not living in our gifting, then we're going to feel less than in some way, shape, or form because we're living less than what we're created. So that's pretty normal stuff. So it doesn't really matter what your gifting is. Figure that out and then go execute it in some way that brings joy to you, your family, others. It doesn't really matter. Um, I'm a horse hound, so I love to ride horses. But and then now we're doing some family bonding in that space with, grandkids, and my kids are starting to get into it. And it's a really wonderful thing. But my husband is not into horseback riding.
Right.
He would go. I mean, he wants to go. But I doubt that it'll be his big thing.
Right.
Um, we have the annual competition. He may or may not come to that. And I don't care if he does or not, right? If he
Mhm.
does, he'll cheer me on. And if he doesn't, I won't, if we're all celebrating each other anyway. He's a big backpacker. And
Mm.
he took a trip with one of our sons and they went 3 days into the Montana wilderness and had a blast. And I had zero interest in going and doing that. Sleep out with bears. Yeah, I'll pass. I've been there, done that. I don't want to do that anymore. But we celebrate and encourage each other. Like I was so happy to go shopping with him to help him get like he really needed a new pair of hiking boots. So we went and did that. And it made me just so happy to do that with him. And he could have gone and done that by himself, absolutely. But I wanted to be supportive and just spend time with him doing. So you gotta be supportive. And
Mm.
you got so you choose to be supportive of your spouse's hobby and you choose to participate in your own,
Mhm.
or even the work thing, right? Like you got to figure out what those things are and then go do them, within reason, with life balance, caveat.
And one thing you said that I think is also key is you weren't bothered whether he supported you or not. That
Mhm,
takes growth, right?
mhm,
Because,
mhm.
there's the other side of that where it's, I take it personally if you don't support me, or you must participate in this thing with me, or we're not a team.
Right.
Can you
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so he and I both love downhill skiing and we'll travel to do that. And I mean, we don't go as much as we used to, but it's something we both enjoy. And nobody cares who gets to the bottom of the hill first. And there's things he does better than I do, and we encourage each other and that kind of stuff. But I'm in a place with the horses, like this isn't him, but let's say, I mean, your spouse has a good reason for doing or not doing what they do. Um, let's say you're married to somebody that your thing is horses and they're terrified of horses. Like, why would you subject them to that? Why would
Mm-hmm.
you expect them to be somebody that they're not in that space?
Mm-hmm.
And, ladies, most men don't care about scrapbooking. Like, if that's your hobby, like, you gotta lower your expectation about his enthusiasm level with, you know, like it's, and so
But
can
did
we,
you see the guy? There was a guy knitting. Who was knitting? There was some celebrity or something sitting at the diving competition in the Olympics, and he was just knitting away. It was the funniest thing.
that
So
is
there are
funny.
some that exist.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think that's a little weird for me. Like, if I want, my husband can fix machinery and chop wood. And, we had to harvest grapes out of this thing that's growing over our well. And he carried the ladder. I love the utility of men and the muscular nature and the protectiveness of them. Honestly, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm not sure I'd be real like my husband cooks and he's
Mm.
a fabulous cook, right? Um, I don't know what I'd think. Like, I don't know if he picked up knitting now, I'd be okay with it, but I'd think twice about that if we were dating. I don't know. Sorry.
I hope we're not offending anyone.
I know we probably are. I probably am for sure. That's just me though, my preference. I don't know. I think of old ladies when I see knitting.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry.
All right. So I'm hearing it's healthy actually to have different interests where each of you are good at that thing. And it's also healthy to not expect your spouse to care one way or another about that
Mhm,
thing. That doesn't
mhm.
mean you're not a team
Right.
if you're different. I'm sure that being different was part of the attraction to begin with, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it also means he does not mean that he does not love you.
Yes.
Hello. Like for real. Men are different than women and they're going to have different interests. And he's probably going to be as interested as he can if he has, any self-awareness at all, any emotional intelligence. And you can certainly ask him, you can say, okay, I'm going to talk about my thing because I'm really excited about it. You don't have to remember any of this. Just pretend to be excited for me for a second, okay? And he'll go, okay, because you've just given him the path to being successful. That's what he wants. He wants to win. He wants to do well. You've just told him how to win with you. And then give him the thing. He'll be like, wow, good for you. That's awesome. And you give him a big kiss. Everybody's happy. That's it. The end.
The end.
Sounds simple. Should
Pick
be.
pick your battles here.
Amen.
All right. So the second thing I have, which I think we kind of touched on already, is just kind of focusing on the strengths of your spouse. This whole competing against them can be disarmed by just saying, hey, we might both be doing this, but you're actually really good at doing
Hmm.
it. And it not mean that you are any, like you said, less valued. You're not any, it doesn't affect your identity, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Did you have any thoughts around that? Just by focusing on the strengths of your spouse, not taking away from your own strengths?
Yeah. So a lot of people play pickleball together right now. This is
Mhm.
the latest craze, right? It's like cross between table tennis and tennis, ping pong and tennis. Like I don't get it. It's wiffle ball. And so I have friends that are playing this. I don't play it. But the husband and the wife play.
Mhm.
And it's wise to be supportive, even when you're playing against your spouse. So, when they hit a good shot and you miss it, like you got a choice in that moment. Am I going to beat up on myself? Am I going to be angry at him? Or am I going to go, wow, that was a good shot? And that would be the wise thing to do. That's what's real. That's what's true. Instead of taking it personally and making it about you or blaming him, like, come on, let's all be mature here. So I think the most mature couples really just appreciate reality. That was a good shot. You got me running all over the court. Can you lighten up? I want to enjoy this today. Like you're roasting me, man. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. All right. Yeah, let's just volley some, But you got to
Yeah,
ask for what you want and be clear about it. And if he does, you know, if you're in a league together and stuff like that, and he just cremates somebody, like celebrate it. And be okay with not being as good at it as he is. Like, who cares? It's a game.
it's a game. The thing that comes to mind is running a marathon and how sometimes the person that is faster will slow down
Hmm.
to the slower person's pace, but they both finish the race, which is
Yeah.
a major accomplishment. So,
Great, great example. Yeah, that's huge.
but that's sacrificial, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be mature enough to say, I don't have to be the fastest
Hmm.
as long as we do it together. That's
Hmm.
important. And then you also have to appreciate from the other side that your spouse is faster, and they're making that sacrifice and
Hmm.
acknowledging that, like you said, like you're better at this than me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way the world is. Like, just is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then the final point I wanted to make is sometimes we can just let our spouse win. It's like I said, not every battle is worth fighting. One thing might be more important to your spouse to win at than you. Um, is it the end of the world to let your spouse have that victory? Are we gonna fight tooth and nail? You know?
Hmm.
So I know that's happened to me, where I've had to step back and say, how important is this in the big scheme of things to
Hmm.
to win, or even just to be right? It could just be
Yeah.
a disagreement, right? And
Right.
you can just let them be right.
Hmm.
Because you want to sleep, you want to go to sleep, you want to have a good night's rest, or you know,
Well,
so
and I think it comes down to what is it in us that needs the other person to know we're right? Like, why are we hanging on and fighting that so hard? I had a thing not too long ago where I was right about something and I really wanted to tell him. And and God zipped my lips up and I'm like, and so and I don't usually do this, but I was like, well, how come I can't tell him? Like, are you gonna tell him? You're gonna tell him, right? Like,
this is you and God
yeah,
talking.
it's me and God. And I mean, I didn't obsess over it all day or anything, but I thought about it off and on, probably 2 or 3 times an hour for 6 hours. I'm like, and the Lord came back to me with, hey, Nina, why do you care about this? I know you're right. You know you're right. Can that be enough?
Oof.
Yeah, at the time it wasn't, but by the end of the 6 hours, it was. And it came down to a moment from my childhood where my one of my parents had accused me of lying, and I hadn't. But I didn't have the words or the emotional control to talk about what happened in an intelligent way. And so in that moment, they really believed that I was lying, and I got in trouble for it. And back then that was a spanking.
Mm.
And so and but it was unjust,
Right.
right? So this sense of justice came up, and it was really a cool experience because I was able to navigate that with the Lord, and I didn't, by the end of that, I didn't care if I was right or whatever. Like I didn't care at all, and it was really cool to have learned that about myself and work that with the Father and have Him heal that. I didn't even know that was there, you know, and I'm pretty good about most of the time, like, well, yeah, you can think that if you want to. Like, I really am good at letting other people think what they want to think. I don't waste my time trying to argue people into this or that, um, unless it impacts me in some way, shape, or form. Most of those places don't. We have a lot of foolish arguments. And that was the verse he brought to mind, was have no part in foolish arguments. And I'm like, why is this foolish? It feels important. He's like, yeah, what's that about? So digging into what's in that space where we need to be right, because there's a reason for it. It has zero to do with what your spouse just said or the current competition you're trying to win. It's about something else. And that's an opportunity for our character to be developed if we'll allow God the space in the room to work in that in us.
The more I grow older, the more I realize none of the stuff, half the stuff, maybe most of the stuff we disagree about isn't about the thing we're disagreeing
Hmm. Hmm.
about. It's about the why, like you just said, why we're so up in arms, why we're so upset, why are we so bothered? You know, that I feel like is the end goal for all of us, is to know ourselves
Hmm.
and heal those places. And all these other things are just being used to get us there.
Yep. I had
Anyway.
a call this week with a client who went through a similar thing that I did. And the Lord revealed something to her about her spouse. And instead of continuing on with this disagreement and trying to be right, she just asked a question, and it created connection. And which is what ended up happening in my situation too, because I kept my mouth shut. Um, he came back later and said, yeah, I looked that up. You're actually right. And it
Mm,
it was funny because I thought, oh, I'll feel vindicated. I didn't feel anything. I was just like, oh, okay. It was nothing. And I was glad that it was nothing, because if it meant something, boy, that's not healthy. But in my client's situation, her husband came back with, I've been thinking about this, and you know, here's what happened to me when I was a kid and why I think and feel this way. And it was a beautiful connection that they had as a result. She could have screwed that up so big. Me too, right? And I think that's the temptation. And so anytime we've got this, oh, I need to be right here, it's like, okay, you can do that if you want to, but you're on the wrong path.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. Usually there's something deeper.
Yep.
All right. Well, I hope this was helpful to our listeners in identifying some ways to sort of get out of that unhealthy competition space. So we invite you again to go to our website for more information on Greater Impact. We also have, I just want to mention a group on Facebook. It's a free group you can join if you want to get into a community and just discuss these topics and learn more about what we do. And then we also have more episodes on this channel for you to check out. And we hope you'll join us next time.